what's been on my mind lately? That weird thing where you wake up and you know exactly what you should do today, like you've even written it down the night before, but the second you open your eyes, it's like none of it feels possible. Not because you're tired, really, just because starting feels like this enormous, invisible wall. Does that happen to you?
Oh, absolutely. It's so strange, right? Because physically you're fine. You could do the thing. But mentally, it's like your brain just goes, nope, not today. And then you end up doing something completely mindless instead, scrolling through your phone, watching random videos, and the whole time there's this little voice in the back of your head reminding you about the things you're not doing. It's exhausting in its own way.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're exploring today. Those moments when laziness doesn't feel like a choice, but more like this fog you can't quite push through. The times when motivation just evaporates, even for things that aren't difficult. Like, I'm not talking about climbing a mountain here. I'm talking about putting away laundry or sending one email. But somehow, even that feels like too much. Welcome to English Ultra, where you learn English through real-life conversations. And hey, if you enjoy these calm, real conversations, subscribe to English Ultra so you don't miss future episodes.
I love that you said it feels like fog, because that's exactly it. It's not that you're actively deciding to be lazy. It's more like you're stuck in this gray space where nothing feels urgent enough to actually move you. And the weirdest part? Sometimes the things you're avoiding are things you actually enjoy once you start them. Like, I'll put off going for a walk for hours, and then when I finally go, I'm like, wait, why was this so hard to start? It makes no sense.
Oh, that drives me crazy. Because you'd think your brain would remember that. You'd think it would say, hey, remember yesterday when you felt like this and then you did the thing and it was fine? But no, every single day it's the same battle. I keep telling myself I'm going to start my mornings differently. Get up, make coffee, do something productive right away. But then morning comes and I'm just lying there, negotiating with myself about whether I really need to get out of bed yet.
The negotiation phase is so real. It's like this whole internal debate. Well, I could get up now, or I could stay here for 5 more minutes. 5 minutes won't hurt. And then 5 minutes turns into 20, and suddenly you're running late and the whole morning feels off. And by the way, I'm David. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. What's funny is that once the morning goes sideways, it's like the rest of the day follows. One small delay just cascades into everything else.
I'm Lily, and yeah, you're so right about that cascade effect. It's like once you've already messed up your morning routine, or whatever routine you had in mind, your brain just decides the whole day is a wash. Well, I already slept in and skipped breakfast, so what's the point of trying now? And then you end up spending the afternoon feeling guilty about doing nothing productive, but still not actually doing anything. It's this weird limbo.
And the guilt is the worst part, honestly, because you're not even enjoying the laziness at that point. You're not relaxing, you're just sitting there, half watching something, half thinking about all the things you should be doing. It's like the worst of both worlds. You're not being productive, but you're also not recharging. You're just stuck in this uncomfortable middle ground, feeling bad about yourself.
Yes, and I think that's what makes it so hard to break out of. Because when laziness comes with that much guilt, it's not restful. It's not even pleasant. You're just marinating in this low-level stress the whole time. And then, because you feel so bad about it, starting anything feels even harder. Like, well, I've already wasted half the day, so now I feel terrible. And when I feel terrible, I definitely don't want to do anything challenging. It becomes this loop that's really hard to escape.
That loop is so frustrating. And what's tricky is that rest is important, right? Like sometimes your body and mind actually need downtime. But how do you tell the difference between genuinely needing rest and just avoiding things because starting feels uncomfortable? Because I'll convince myself I need a break, and then I'll take the break, and I still feel tired afterward. So clearly, that wasn't what I needed. But I didn't know that until after.
That's such a good question, and honestly, I don't think I've figured it out. Sometimes I wonder if real rest is the kind where you're not thinking about the things you're not doing. Like, if you're truly taking a break, you're present in that moment. You're reading something you enjoy, or you're outside, or you're with someone, and you're not mentally listing all your undone tasks. But if you're sitting there, supposedly resting, and the whole time you're feeling guilty or distracted, that's probably not rest. That's probably just procrastination wearing a rest costume.
Procrastination wearing a rest costume? I love that. Because yeah, they feel similar in the moment, but they're so different. When I actually rest, I come back feeling clearer. When I procrastinate, I come back feeling more behind and more anxious. But in the moment, they can look identical from the outside. You're sitting on the couch either way. The difference is what's happening in your head.
Exactly. And I think that mental difference is why small habits feel so much harder than they should, because it's not about the action itself. Like making your bed takes 2 minutes, drinking a glass of water takes 10 seconds. These aren't difficult things physically, but starting them requires breaking through that mental fog. And some days, the fog is just too thick. Some days, even the smallest task feels like it's asking too much.
And then there's that thing where you'll avoid something small all day and it becomes this huge weight. Like, I need to reply to one email, but I don't do it right away, and then every time I think about it, it feels a little bit heavier. By the end of the day, that email has grown in my mind into this enormous task, even though it's still just one email. The longer I wait, the harder it gets, which makes no logical sense but feels completely real.
Oh, I do that all the time, especially with things that are quick but slightly uncomfortable, like making a phone call or asking someone a question. I'll put it off for days, and the whole time it's sitting in the back of my mind, creating this low-level stress. And then when I finally do it, it takes 2 minutes, and I immediately think, why didn't I just do this days ago? But knowing that doesn't stop me from doing the exact same thing next time.
It really doesn't, does it? It's like your brain refuses to learn the lesson. I keep telling myself, just do it now and it'll be done. And sometimes I do, and I feel great. But other times I just don't, and I can't even explain why. It's not that I'm busy, it's not that I don't have time. I just don't feel like starting. And that feeling is somehow stronger than all the logic telling me to just get it over with.
I wonder if that's where discipline is supposed to come in. Like maybe the whole point of discipline is doing it even when you don't feel like it. But that sounds exhausting, doesn't it? The idea of forcing yourself to do things all day, every day, just because you should, even when your brain is screaming at you to stop. I don't know if that's sustainable. Or maybe I'm just making excuses because I don't want to admit that I need more discipline.
I think there's a balance, though, because yeah, some level of discipline is probably necessary. You can't just wait around for motivation to show up, because some days it never does. But at the same time, if you're white-knuckling your way through every single task, that's going to burn you out. Maybe it's about finding the small things that make starting easier, so you don't need as much willpower every single time, like creating little systems or routines that reduce the friction.
That makes sense. I've noticed that when I do something at the same time every day, it eventually stops requiring a decision. Like, I don't have to convince myself to brush my teeth at night, it's just automatic. But building that automaticity is hard, especially at the beginning when you're still having to force it. Those first few weeks of trying to build a habit are brutal because you're doing it purely on willpower, and willpower is such an unreliable resource.
Right, and I think that's where people get discouraged, because the beginning is the hardest part, and if you slip up once or twice, it's easy to think, well, I'm just not good at this. I'm not disciplined enough. And then you give up before the habit has a chance to actually stick. I've done that so many times, tried to start something new, missed a day or two, and then just abandoned it entirely because it felt like proof that I couldn't do it.
I've absolutely done that too. And it's frustrating because missing one day shouldn't erase all the days you did do it. Like if you worked out 5 days in a row and then skipped the sixth day, that doesn't mean you failed. But it feels like failure, doesn't it? It feels like you broke the streak and now you have to start over from zero, which isn't true, but that's how your brain interprets it.
It's such an all-or-nothing way of thinking, and it really doesn't help. I'm trying to be better about that, reminding myself that one missed day is just one day. It doesn't cancel out everything else. But that mindset shift is hard, especially because there's so much pressure around consistency. Like you see people online talking about their morning routines or their workout streaks, and it's all perfect and unbroken, and you start to think that's the standard. But I bet most of those people have off days too. They just don't post about them.
Oh, definitely. Nobody posts about the days they stayed in bed until noon or ate cereal for dinner because they didn't feel like cooking. But those days happen. And honestly, I think sometimes they need to happen. Like maybe your body or your mind is genuinely asking for a break, and ignoring that completely isn't helpful either. The hard part is figuring out when you're genuinely tired versus when you're just avoiding discomfort.
Yeah, that's the tricky line. And I think it shifts depending on the day and what's going on in your life. Like some weeks, I can tell I'm genuinely exhausted and need to slow down. Other weeks, I'm just procrastinating because I'm in a low-energy rut, and what I actually need is to move my body or do something that makes me feel accomplished. But distinguishing between those two in the moment is really hard.
It really is. And I think part of it is tuning into how you feel after you do something versus how you felt before. Like if I drag myself out for a walk even though I don't want to, and then I come back feeling lighter and clearer, that tells me I was in avoidance mode, not genuine exhaustion. But if I push myself to do something and I come back feeling more drained and resentful, maybe that was a sign I actually needed rest. It's like you have to run the experiment to know.
That's a good way to look at it. It's not about having the perfect answer ahead of time. It's about paying attention to what actually helps. And that's probably different for everyone and different depending on the situation. But I like the idea that you can learn from it instead of just feeling guilty either way. Like if you rest and it helps, great. If you rest and it doesn't, you've learned something for next time.
Exactly. And I think the guilt is what messes everything up, because when you feel guilty about resting, you don't actually rest well. And when you feel guilty about not being productive, you can't focus on anything anyway. So you end up in this horrible middle zone where you're not doing either thing well. Learning to let go of that guilt, or at least reduce it, would probably make everything easier.
That's so true. And I think part of letting go of guilt is being a little more honest with yourself about what you're actually capable of on any given day. Like some days you're firing on all cylinders and you can tackle a big list. Other days you're running on fumes and getting through 3 small things is a win. But we tend to hold ourselves to the same standard every single day, which just doesn't work. Your energy isn't the same every day, so why would your output be?
That's such a good point. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. We expect ourselves to perform at the same level constantly, and that's just not realistic. Your sleep, your stress, what you ate, how much social interaction you had, all of that affects your energy, and yet we act like we should be able to override it all and just push through no matter what. No wonder we end up feeling lazy. We're comparing ourselves to an impossible standard.
And then, when we can't meet that standard, we spiral into this whole thing where we feel like we're failing at basic life stuff. Like, why can't I just do the dishes? Why is this so hard? What's wrong with me? But maybe nothing's wrong. Maybe you just had a rough day, or you're overwhelmed, or your brain is tired. And the dishes can wait. They're not going anywhere.
I needed to hear that, honestly, because I do that all the time. I make simple tasks into measures of my worth. Like if I didn't do the laundry today, I'm lazy. If I didn't get through my to-do list, I'm undisciplined. But that's so much pressure to put on everyday stuff, and it makes everything feel heavier than it needs to be. Maybe the goal isn't to do everything perfectly all the time. Maybe it's just to do what you can and be okay with that.
I think that's probably healthier. And I think it might actually make it easier to get things done, weirdly enough. Because when there's less pressure and less guilt, starting doesn't feel as overwhelming. Like if I tell myself, I'm just going to clean the kitchen for 10 minutes, and if I stop after that, it's fine. I'm way more likely to start than if I tell myself I have to deep clean the entire kitchen right now. Even though obviously I'd love to have a perfectly clean kitchen, but lowering the barrier makes it feel possible.
That's a really smart approach. I've heard people talk about that before. The idea of just committing to a tiny amount of time and then seeing what happens. Because usually, once you start, it's not as bad as you thought, and you end up doing more than you planned. But even if you don't, you still did something, which is better than nothing. It takes the pressure off.
Exactly. And I think that's where small wins come in. Like if you can stack up a few small wins in a day, even if they're tiny, like drinking water or making your bed, it starts to shift your mindset a little. You go from feeling like you're behind on everything to feeling like you're actually moving forward, even if it's slow. And that momentum can carry you into the next thing.
I love that idea of momentum because it really is true that starting is the hardest part. Once you're in motion, it's easier to keep going, but getting that initial push is where laziness really digs in. And I think sometimes we underestimate how much just starting, even badly, even imperfectly, can change the whole energy of the day.
Yeah, and I think that's why routines help, even if they're loose routines, because they give you that starting point without having to think about it too much. Like if your morning routine is just coffee, a 5-minute stretch, and a quick glance at your calendar, that's still a routine. It's not complicated, but it gives your brain a pathway to follow instead of waking up and immediately feeling overwhelmed by decisions.
That makes a lot of sense because decision fatigue is real. And if you're starting your day by having to decide everything from scratch, that's exhausting before you've even done anything. But if a few things are automatic, you save that energy for the stuff that actually matters. I think that's why people say mornings set the tone for the whole day, not because you have to be productive immediately, but because having some structure makes everything else feel more manageable.
Right. And I think structure doesn't have to mean rigid. It can be flexible. It's just having a general shape to your day, so you're not constantly wondering what you should be doing next. Because that wondering, that decision-making, that's where a lot of the mental energy gets drained. And then you feel tired before you've actually done anything, which makes you more likely to just give up and do nothing.
That's such a good way to put it, and I think that's part of why laziness can feel so circular. You're tired, so you don't do things, but not doing things makes you feel worse, which makes you more tired, or at least more mentally drained. And breaking out of that cycle requires some kind of interruption, something that shakes you out of the pattern, even if it's just standing up and walking to another room.
Yeah, physical movement helps more than I ever give it credit for. Like even just changing your environment or your position can shift something mentally. If I'm lying on the couch feeling completely unmotivated, sometimes just sitting up or going outside for 2 minutes is enough to reset. It's not a cure, but it's a starting point, and starting points matter.
They really do, and I think that's maybe the biggest thing, realizing that you don't have to fix everything at once. You don't have to become the most disciplined, productive version of yourself overnight. You just have to take one small step, and then another, and eventually those steps add up. But in the moment, when you're stuck in that fog, it's hard to remember that. It's hard to see past the feeling of not wanting to start.
It is. But I think that conversations like this help, honestly. Just talking through it, realizing that other people feel the same way, that it's not just you being uniquely terrible at life. Laziness and motivation and habits, these are things everyone struggles with. And maybe there's some relief in that. Like, okay, this is part of being human. It's not a personal failing, it's just something we all have to navigate.
That's a good reminder, and I think it also helps to recognize that progress isn't linear. Some days you're going to feel motivated and get a bunch of stuff done. Other days you're going to struggle with the basics, and that's okay. It doesn't erase the good days, and it doesn't mean you're back at square one. You're just living, and life has ups and downs. The goal is probably just to ride those waves as best you can without judging yourself too harshly.
I think that's exactly right. And if you're listening to this and you've been stuck in one of those low motivation phases, just know that it happens. You're not broken. You're not lazy in some permanent, unfixable way. It's just a moment or a season, and it will shift. And in the meantime, be kind to yourself. Do the small things when you can. Rest when you need to. And remember that tomorrow's a new day.
Beautifully said. And if this kind of conversation helps, you can subscribe to English Ultra. We're here whenever you need a calm, reflective space to think through these everyday struggles. Thanks for being here with us today, and we'll talk to you next time.